Okay, hello everyone. So essentially, we are just going to continue off this theme that we started in the last week, and really, we asked the kasha in the last stream. We didn't get the answer of it. The kasha was that, as I'll say, that who Hamelach Achashverosh is who Berisha MitchilasAvad Seifai. See, right over here, you see who Achashverosh, and it says who Berisha MitchilasAvad Seifai. So we wanted to know, essentially, that it doesn't really make sense to say that Achashverosh is Gerish Hamiklas of that Sofa because the in the beginning he he allows other people, he allows Haman to take the initiative and to write a Xera and Nigeris to destroy the Jewish people, and in the end he allows Mordechai to reverse the decree and send out new letters which say that they have permission to stand up for themselves and kill anybody who wanted to kill them. So the kasha is really stronger than I presented it. The kasha really is when you have a siba, if you're going to present a siba why someone is a Rasha, so then equally, if you see that siba being changed around, on the other end, you also have to say that for that siba, he would have been a tzaddik. And then the two should cancel each other out. So essentially, what I'm saying is, if you say that the reason why Hashverosh is a Rasha, why? Because he allowed Haman to convince him to give his ring so that he would sign, so they can sign a letter so that the Jewish will be destroyed. So that's, in other words, the theme is that there's an external force. The external force is Payal. It acts upon Achashverosh, and Achashverosh gives in to that force and allows that force to do something which is extremely detrimental to Klal Yisrael. So, in that same ilk, the very same ilk of that idea, you can say about what he did with Mordechai. So Mordechai is a tzaddik, and Mordechai tells Achashverosh that he wants to send out he wants to use his tabas to send out letters that say that he is going to save the Jewish people can save themselves and kill anybody who wanted to attack them. So it's the same exact thing that he's doing for two different people. So he was externally pushed into doing what Haman wanted. He was externally pushed into doing what Mordechai wanted. So there's a lashon in Gemara, the Medrash says he's a hafafchan, meaning he's someone who doesn't have any solidified sense of self. He just allows himself to be pushed around, and therefore there is no merit, simply speaking, to the idea that he's a Rasha, and certainly not mitchilas of atzopel. The Chazal are going out of their way to emphasize the idea that there was no switch. In the beginning, he was a Rasha, and in the end, he was a Rasha. I mean, that doesn't really make that much sense according to the way that the events actually happened. Okay, so the other thing that we wanted to know was really this is a question I'm asking now. Why does it say mitchilas so va'ad sofo? You could say mitchila va'ad hasof. So mitchila so means from his beginning. This is very important. This is how you actually learn Chazal. So Chazal is saying mitchila so from his beginning, meaning Achashverosh's beginning, va'ad sofo, and his end. If it was saying, which is the simple shot of what we think it's saying, it is saying that, which is that Paro was a Rasha from the beginning of the Megillah to the end of the Megillah. All the events implied that he was a Rasha, and he never did anything that would make him into a tzaddik or give him a source. So why did it say mitchila so v'ad sofo, which would say mitchila v'ad hasof, as describing the events of the Megillah. Okay, so that's the second question. So, in order to answer this question, there's a very fascinating theme over here, which is brought down in the Esther Rabbah. And it says the following. It says, maybe may, I'm so it says, Amar, Shaya Achiv Shel Rosh, Achiv Shel Nebuchadnezzar. So Techifa Barchana said that Achashverosh was the was used the Achashverosh as ach. So that's literally the breakdown of the word. Achashverosh is ach shel rosh. That's how you darshan the word. Achashverosh is ach shel rosh. So he said he was the head. Sorry, he was the brother of the head. Now who's the head? The head is says Medrash Nebuchadnezzar. So then it asks, V'chi achiv haya? Was he really his brother? This one was Kasdi. This one was Persian. Ella ze bita melechas beis hamikdash v'ze hechrivay. So Achashverosh made the decision to cancel the malacha of the Beis Hamikdash, and this one Nebuchadnezzar killed it. The pasuk made them equal like one. This is what it says in the pasuk: Gamis shapa b'malachtai. Anyone who is lazy with his work, achu leval mashres. He is the brother of one who destroys. Okay, so essentially what it's saying is that in contrast to what people think, that there is a difference, or there is, I'd say there's definitely a difference, but that there is a significant difference in quality of rishus between one who actively does something negative and one who doesn't do something positive. So the Medrash is telling us that that's not true. In other words, it's saying that he's the brother of of Nebuchadnezzar, who was the head. In other words, he was the one who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash beyadayim, and Achashverosh is his brother, meaning he was just as bad as he was. Ach is, simply speaking, a mechanism for the Torah to use to put two things on the same level, because brothers, they're both sons of the same person. So that's the mechanism that it uses. It says they're brothers, meaning they're on the same level. And that's what the Medrash is saying. Achul v'ish mashkas, he is the brother of someone who destroys. So therefore, with that understanding, we can now get a simple shot. And we can say the following. We can say that the taich of what's being said here, and it's brought out really the best in the Metzias of when Esther asks Achashverosh to return L'hashivas Asfarim, right? To return the Sfarim that were said that you can kill the Jews. Achashverosh refused. He said, "Ki chesav asher nichtav b'shem hamelech." Any writing that went out with the name of the king, v'nechtam, and was sealed b'tavas hamelech, ein lehashiv. You can't bring it back. It's not. That's not something I'm willing to do. That's what Achashverosh said. But he allowed him to make new ones. So what you see over here is like this. What you see is, and this is really the depth of what I was saying last time, that the Megillah is saying, and it was b'mei Achashverosh. What that means is that the Achashverosh was, in his essence, someone who denied the metzius of and the hashgacha of, and his essence was to remove and to take away malchus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He did not want there to be any such a thing that God is in the world and therefore it's going to be run by him and he's the one that's running and controlling things. Rather, I'm going to be in control. That was the underlying essence. That was what Ahasuerus wanted, and that's what he was. And therefore, he commanded that the Malacha of the Beis Hamikdash should be stopped. That's the idea. And that's why throughout the entire Megillah, when he says, Ad Chatzi HaMalchus. So, all the Midrashim say, what does it mean? It means he'll be willing to give Esther anything, except for something that would chop the Malchus in half, which is the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. And what that really means is that was Ahasuerus' whole idea of his Malchus was only Lafuke, and in contrast, and as opposed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchus, which is why the Medrash says that Ahasuerus wore the Big Day Kahuna. He wore the Big Day Kahuna in his party that he made. And the Medrash also says, and you can look all this in Medrash, that the whole reason for the celebration was that Ahasuerus was celebrating 3 years since the Beis Hamikdash stopped being built. So he felt that it was now going to be permanently not built, and now the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kingdom, and a world in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is apparent and obvious, is no longer a possibility, and therefore that he celebrated that. And therefore, Achashverosh, the person, is a Rasha. And just to get a very, very simple understanding of what Rishus means, Rishus is, the Sharish word is Ra, and Ra is the Matthias of a person or a being drawing self from lack or from destruction or taking away of something. So I want to make that very clear. If something is Ra, or someone is a Rasha, it means that he draws essence from the breakdown and the negativity and the overtaking of something else. That's the definition of Ra. So you say Lashon Hara, what you're saying is Lashon Hara means that I am speaking negatively about someone else to you, which and anybody who speaks Lashon Hara knows that this is the taich of the Geshmak of Lashon Hara. I am chaser, but I'm going to point out how much more chaser someone else is, and I'm going to tell that to my friend, and therefore I can now feel good about myself in contrast to the person because I'm emphasizing how lacking he is. So Lashon Hara, the Geshmak of Lashon Hara, comes from the fact that it fuels a sense of self based off the destruction, the put down, and the negativity which is pointed out and which is occurring to your fellow Jew. And that's why it's Lashon Hara. It's Ra. It's evil. That's the definition of evil. Evil means sustaining oneself from negativity and put down and destruction and deterioration of the reality. And Achashverosh was a Rasha. Why is that true? Because Achashverosh thrived from the reality of the fact that he canceled Binyan Beis HaMikdash, as we just explained. And he wore the big Tikkun, he used the vessels that were in the Beis HaMikdash in his party. He thrived off of that. He thrived. That was his whole essence. He thrived off of the fact that now he is in charge of the world. He is in charge of the world order, and no one, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not. And therefore, now we can understand, that's why it doesn't say that he was a Rasha, mitchila v'ad sof. Hashbash wasn't a Rasha, mitchila v'ad sof. That would imply that the reality of his behavior was one that it could be visible from that he was an evil person. And that is not true. Because in the result of his behavior, he allowed Mordechai and he allowed Esther to take action, which ended up being positive. However, from the fact that we see that he didn't want to return his old sparm, right? He didn't want to return the old sparm. That means he never went back on the Gzera that he did, that he wanted to kill the Jews. He just did a new one because he was willing to be pressured into doing something else. And that's why it says, Berish o mitchila so ve'ad sofo. He is a Rasha from his beginning to his end. Even in his end, the essence of him, of Achashverosh, is that he, just like Nebuchadnezzar, he got all of his sense of self from the active destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and from doing the external reality of the Maisa of destroying the Beis HaMikdash. So too, Achashverosh also got his essence from the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. But he got it from doing something which made it that it won't be built back up. Not that he actively destroyed it like Nebuchadnezzar did. But the nafkamina of that is only on the external perception that you're perceiving it. In terms of the inner reality of the two people, Achashverosh and Nebuchadnezzar were the same quality of person. Their entire essence was ra. It sustained itself from evil, which means from the breakdown and the destruction of reality, i.e., Binyan Beis HaMikdash and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is the simplest taich of what this is saying, and it's also the simplest taich of the idea of the Vayidum Achashverosh, which we were saying last time, which is that Achashverosh was someone whom his times means that he rejected the Ashgacha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore it's considered in the times of Achashverosh these things occurred, because it's due to the reality of his being, of Achashverosh's being, that these negative things occurred. That's why it's Vayim Achashverosh, and that's why it's Tsar, and that is the Taich of the Vayim